Hello and welcome to House of Commerce. Hope you all are doing well. So in today's lecture, we are going to study about accounts receivable and the entries involved in account receivable and the complete treatment till getting the bad debts amount. So firstly, we are going to discuss about the items to be involved in account receivable. Number one is credit sales. Many of you guys know about it, what is credit sales. If you have sold anything on account to the customer and the money is to be received in the future, that is called the credit sales. Then number second, cash collection from the customer. This is an important item which is involved in account receivable. Then write-off. Write-off means if the customer is not going to give the money back and we have got the positive signals from his end that we are not going to get the money back, then we record the write-off in our books. Bad debts are just the estimates, while write-off is the actually sunk cost which we have given to our customers. Then write-off recovered. Write-off recovered means if the customer who has taken our money, who has defaulted or who has gone bankrupt and has not the ability to give us the money back, then if he gets the money back and if he pays back, then we record the write-off recovered. Now how to record it into the entries and then finally into the ledgers, let us discuss about that. Okay, so number one entry to record under account receivable is credit sales. So for recording the credit sales, we got to write account receivable on the debit side and the sales on credit side. Why it is so? Because the money which we are to receive in the future and which has not been received yet is an asset for us. So being asset, account receivable is being increased and shall be written on the debit side, while the sales are the source of income and revenue. So as the revenue increases, it is written on the credit side. Now let's move to the second one. Okay, so second entry to record the cash collection from the customers. So cash shall be written on debit side, while the account receivable shall be written on the credit side. Why it is so? Because cash is an asset and it is being inflown into the company. Therefore, we will write it on the debit side, and account receivable, as we have received the money from the customers, so while we had to receive it, we were writing it on the debit side. And now we have received the money, therefore we will reduce it, and as it being reduced shall be written on the credit side. Therefore cash shall be debit and account receivable credit. Okay, moving forward to the third one, to record the sales return. Sales return being the contra revenue shall be written on the debit side while increasing, and account receivable, as we don't have to receive the money for which the customer has returned us the goods, therefore we will reduce our account receivable, and as it being reduced shall be written on credit side. Now moving forward to the fourth one is to record the write-off. So how to record the write-off is provision for doubtful debts debit. Why the provision for doubtful debts is debit? Because the provision is just an estimate which we have made that might be this and that customers shall not return the money. So as it has originally been written off from the books, so we will lower down the estimate by debiting it, and we will decrease account receivable as well while writing it on the credit side, and provision for doubtful debts debit and account receivable credit. Now the fifth one is to record write-off recovered. Now how to record write-off recovered? We got to pass two of the entries while recording the write-off recovered, as we had debit the provision for doubtful debts and credited account receivable. Now we got to reverse the entry and we have to debit account receivable and provision for doubtful debts credit. Now by reversing this entry, we have got the customer into the list again, and now we will record the normal collection entry as we pass from the normal customers. Therefore, the second entry shall be cash credit and account receivable credit. Okay, so now let's move forward to the ledgers. Now firstly, we are going to make accounts receivable ledger And here we have put opening balance on the debit side because it is an asset and normal side of an asset is debit. And we have written the closing balance on the credit side. Then sales on the debit side because the entry of this is made while debiting account receivable and the sales on the credit side. Then we have written provision write-off recovered. As we have seen in the previous entries that write-off when recovered shall have a reversal entry. Therefore, we will debit the account receivable and provision shall be credited. Then cash on credit side because we have seen in the entries that cash debit and account receivable credit. And in the same way, sales return shall be debit and account receivable shall be credit. Then provision while writing off. While writing off, we pass an entry, the provision for doubtful debts, debit and account receivable, credit. Therefore, we have written it on the credit side. So, while adding up all this and deducting this side, we will get the closing balance. So now, we are moving towards the provision for doubtful debts account. Okay, now, next is provision for doubtful debts account. Now, opening balance is written on the credit side as it is a contra asset. That is why. And the closing balance is written on the credit side, on debit side. Then, write-off recovered. As we have discussed before, that entry to record, write-off recovered is account receivable debit and provision for doubtful debts credit. Therefore, we have written it on the credit side and write-off on the debit side because to record the entry of write-off is provision for doubtful debts debit and account receivable credit. Now we get to understand two of the things, that how to make this account and what to find from this account while doing account receivable. Now bad debt expense and closing balance, these two are the figures which are to be found out while making the provision for doubtful debts. Now this and this figures can be missed. If in the question he has given the rate to be applied on the sales, I repeat, if he has given any rate to be applied on the credit sales, then we can get this balance, and by adding this side and deducting this side, we can get the closing balance. And then next, if he has missed both the figures and he has given in the question that we have applied the rate on the closing of account receivable, therefore, by applying the rate on the closing account receivable, we will get provisions closing balance. And by adding this side and deducting the opening and write-off recovered, if available, we can get provision bad debt expense for the year. And we will pass the entry of bad debt expense debit, bad debt expense debit, and provision credit by the amount for the year. Hope you have understood this method. Now we are moving forward to the next one. So there is another method to record the aging of account receivable. To record the bad debts and others, that is called aging of account receivable. Now, how to do this method, how to solve this method? Here, we have account receivable amounts which are taken by the customers on different dates. Then we have aging, that this 3 lakh pertains to 0 to 30 days older debts. Now 150,000 which is between 30 to 60 days, then 170,000 which are pertaining to 60 to 90 days, and 50,000 of over 90 days. Now here we have different rates to be applied on these bad debts, these account receivables. Now on this 3 lakh we have to apply 2%, then we will get an estimate of of bad debts which is 6,000. Then 150,000 into 5%, here we get 7,500. Now 170,000, 10% shall be 17,000, then 50,000 into 15%, and it is 7,500. Now by adding up all these figures, we get 38,000. Now what is this? By adding up all this, we get closing of provision. Now by putting this figure into provision for doubtful debts closing balance into the ledger of provision for doubtful debts, we can get the bad debts expense amount by totaling both the sides. Now this is all about accounts receivable. Hope you have got the idea. If you have any query regarding this, you can put into the comment section, and then we will entertain into our next lectures. Till then, goodbye.